Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines here in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, and Jackie here from Copenhagen, Denmark.
I haven't actually. Jack and I were chatting about it. I didn't ask him how is it still. Has it been hot over there in Denmark?
Yeah, yeah. As you know from your standard, it isn't that hard, but here it's quite hot. Um, we have done a lot of temperature converting. I
Yeah,
can't tell you what Fahrenheit it has been, but near what mid 20s to 30s, just below 30 for us here in Celsius.
I just I just did a conversion, so it hasn't hit 100 yet, but it's been darn close. And 100 is 37.8 Celsius. Um,
Yeah, the, we I don't think we've ever had a temperature that high. Would be my
yeah,
guess.
you melt. Yeah,
Yeah, a summer day here
yeah.
is when I I'm I might be forgetting, but I do believe that the the
Medium.
yeah, the median
Yeah,
temperature needs to be above 26 Celsius to be a summer day. Be
gotcha.
that, yeah.
In my attic, which I've been telling Jackie I've been doing all this work in my attic. I did all this because it gets so ridiculously hot. So I added a radiant barrier and insulation. But I used to walk out there and it would be like 120 degrees, which is 48.8 or 48.9 Celsius, right? So if you can in any way imagine like what that feels like, it's hot.
It's hot. Yeah, yeah. I can't remember, but I actually do believe that fif- what 54. I think that's where you can actually burn your skin.
Mm,
If surface is 54
yep,
or above
that sounds about
Celsius.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, enough about the weather. We can keep complaining. But today we were going to talk about how important it is to annotate your code and why it's important, how it helps, and when it helps, and who it helps. And annotating means just adding notes, non-programmatic code to your program to help. There's a lot of reasons, right? The biggest one obviously is just to help you understand what in the world is going on at that particular spot in your code.
Yeah, I'd say I do use it for, as you also know, and we've looked at it before. I do try when, at least when doing programs that I know I'll be editing later, to use good long variable names. Don't Not trying to make them too short, but as saying as possible. So so by just reading variables, function names, stuff like that, they'll tell me at least something about itself. So it's just not function f or var or whatever one might do. Um, but yeah, there is just places where actually using a comment, even though it doesn't make um, the code much better or anything like that, but it might be a good thing to know when you come back next week or next month for that matter.
Or
Or
next year or whatever. Yeah.
yeah,
I can't tell you how many times I've looked at stuff and had forgotten that I was the one that even wrote it, that I don't even recognize any of it. And that's part of that learning curve. Oh, but I wanted to take a step back because your point was excellent about using long variable names or function names to help understand it. It's basically you're annotating inside your code. But I wanted to do it, and I can do it, but you're obviously the source because you've told me this. Like, tell me an example of one, like a variable, right? The length of a variable name that you'd use.
a normal length of a variable name I would
Or just
use.
make up a variable. I know you've told me before, but just make up a variable, describe it. All right, I'll just do it because I know from what you'll say, like the name of the variable. This is the variable name is um, the location of the second window that is beyond the green door, whatever, right? But
Yeah,
that long thing would be the name of your variable. And
exactly.
of course, the name of your function usually is going to be more of a thing that you're doing type of this, the defining what it does. But yeah, that's a great point. Of it's very similar to annotating. You're just doing it in the code.
Yeah, and to me, it gives me both, right? If I'm reusing the variable, and people might be, it takes a longer time to write it, and yeah, but if you use a good editor, or yeah, or at least as me, I don't like typing on the keyboard, so I copy paste a lot. So yeah, I don't really feel the extra characters that needs to be. But again, I'm not in an environment where actual typing speed matters, which I know that at least I saw at some point that people who were um, applying for coding jobs and stuff like that would have their word per minute count on there. Where
Yeah.
I'm like, is that really a good measuring point for how good of a
No,
programmer or something else you might be?
it's kind of funny, but we could define a new term of how fast are you of a copy and a paster, right? Because that is much more, if you want to be efficient, that's how you're going to be efficient in coding, right? It's not going to be for writing the stuff from scratch. That's for sure.
Yeah, that it shouldn't be, but of course, if if your mindset and if your skill level is high enough that you can you're making something new, and the only limit from your code thoughts
Yeah.
being on the computer is your typing speed,
Yeah.
then I can see why it would matter. But again, because I'm not in a professional environment where the speed of my typing actually matters, much more the time I can save by implementing whatever. Um, so yeah, you could in the right setting it might count, but yeah, to me it doesn't make much sense.
Well, in as you were alluding to, like especially like in AutoHotkey Studio, when you type a variable, when you go to type it again, it auto assists and offers it up, and so it's great because you know exactly which one you were using, and it's very helpful.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? So even if it's long, it just makes a lot more sense to you instead of having uh, pixel green 369. Okay, or image, or you might have shortened image down to I as instead of image resource, then you have it IR and then a number, and at one point you'll just kick yourself for not having named them um, green three leaf with 3 points or whatever it could be, right? But yeah, to
You
me,
know, sorry, but it's funny because it's dawned on me is you're absolutely right. This is the opposite of obfuscation, right? You are purposely writing it in a way that will make it easier for you later. And yet there are tools out there that will take what you did and will obfuscate it for you, right? Create something that's meaningless.
Mhm.
And I think it's a very valid argument to say why your method is absolutely proves it works, right? Because the opposite is what, if you ever step into some code that's been obfuscated and you don't know, the words mean nothing, the variables mean nothing, right, as far as to what they refer to. And man, it's hard to keep it in your brain, right, to go through and understand the code.
Yeah, and others have written programs and whatever, and compilers do it all the time and stuff like that. They actually take care of that. So you having it in the source in a very, very structured, easy way for you as a human to understand and relate to, because the computer, the program, whatever you use, the obscurification, whatever it might be, the uh, code minimizer, or I know they're called all kinds of things, and they'll remove the thing that you're trying to do with your shortened variable names or function naming, and even naming schemes for functions. Again, use something that makes sense. I recently saw, I think it was Lexicos who was changing something in AutoHotkey. Sometimes follow what they do on GitHub, right? And I love seeing that one of the changes he made was minuscule and not to the extent of what we are talking about, but they had some I think it was some variables that had to do with built-in functions and user functions, and at some point those had just been put into the same category. So user function to AutoHotkey was the same as a built-in function, or that was how it saw them or categorized them. And because he separated those out, he actually put in I think it was a B before the built-in one and a U or something before the other. Just like the A underscore index and all the other built-in ones with the A before it, right? I just love seeing that.
Yeah, it's a structure, right? It's a naming convention that helps you understand and what the thing is. Yeah, categorize it. Yeah. And so that was actually a naming convention, which is, you alluded to it earlier. I don't know if you said those words, but having a strong naming convention can really help you keep track of everything as well and understand what it belongs to and this and that.
Yeah, and then comments or annotation becomes a smaller need.
Yeah.
It doesn't go away completely, but instead, let's say you have an if structure or something like that, and when you get down into it, just by checking if this variable something, or if this function that has that name returns something specific, just by reading your own code, you get a clear-cut idea of where you are at it. And then when maybe you move into an if block or whatever it might be, or if you have an else and nothing much happens there, then you can annotate it and say, hey, this was because of that, or this else comes when that doesn't happen, or something like that. But yeah, you don't need to have this big block of comments to tell you what's happening inside your code.
Yeah, another thing I just wrote down was something else I like to shove in there. It's really two things, but they're related. One is if you borrowed what you put in there from somewhere else, put the link, put a URL, that takes you back to where you got it from.
Yeah.
Right. Which is just great. Like, I can't tell you how many times I had initially got a function from the forum, and then later I'm like, oh, I wonder if this is updated, or I, whatever, I wanted to go back to it, and I couldn't cite it to say who it was, because I didn't have that in the script, in the function, in the file. Really annoying.
I while you were talking, I thought about, I think it's, what was his name? Tilk's GDI plus library, right? Where if I remember correctly, it is actually annotated quite a bit, because every function in there is actually described.
Oh, so, yeah.
It could be whichever one it might be. Here I've selected a small one that is called set image, which is kind of saying in itself, but the function has 5 lines of description. The function set image, the description, associates a new image with a static control. And what does the first parameter cover? That's the HWND, so the ID, handle of the control to update. Fair enough. And the second parameter is H bitmap, so a GDI bitmap to associate to the static control. And then what does it return? That's the last thing. If the function succeeds, the return value is non-zero. Again, for me, who hasn't seen this set image function before,
Yeah.
now I both get an idea of what the function does. I get an idea of what the input parameters actually are and what I should put into them. And then I also get the information about what the function returns. And again, it might not be possible for all functions, or it might be hard for some, but I do really feel like it's great to know what each parameter did or is for.
Yeah, and actually, you brought up another reason for doing it, and it's related to something I want to touch on anyway. Was, look, the annotation it's often for you, but often it's for other people as well, right? And but more specifically, with what you were just describing, was you can even go and just look at it like on Stack Overflow, and if that's all commented, you can decide if you want to even download it in the first place, right? You don't even have to go test it because it's explained enough that you can read through it and go, oh, you know what, this is not at all what I was looking for, or it is. But imagine being able to do it without having to download the code, run it, and see what it's doing, right? It's a great time saving.
He does a few other things, but one of the things he also does is some of the other ones. And you can go and look it up, or you can go and check the header if that's something you do with functions. But let's say you're doing a del call to a specific, stretch function within this GDI plus library, and the del actually takes in hexamal numbers as a parameter, and you can go and look up what those means. But here in the GDI plus library, he's actually included them in the notes for it. So instead of you having to go and look all of them up, and yeah, this is great for me as someone who's trying to use something he wrote. But if it was my own and I had already gone and looked these up, I would have put them there myself.
It reminds me when I did I'm actually working on it right now, revising some, but my Excel library, and of course there are those Excel constants, right? Which like -423, and that Excel can have inside Excel and VBA, you can put in, like, that means paste special, whatever it means. You can just put Excel _ paste special, whatever the thing is. And it has the constant translates for you, but AutoHotkey, you have to get that number and put it in place. And if you later come back and it says -4213, and you're like, what the hell is that, right? Like, I have no idea. But if I've commented and also put the link to where you got it, then maybe next time you want to paste values, and now you know exactly where you got the other one, right? You can go back and find the other value you want. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, and the thing to remember is your program won't get your source file. Yeah, it will get bigger, but the AutoHotkey interpreter, when it actually reads the script, it ignores comments and it ignores white space. So it's not because you will have a bigger program in memory. What you could say with a big enough program, the way that I did it, where you actually use a lot of characters to name your functions and your variables, you might argue that could have an impact on memory if the script becomes big enough. But with comments or annotation, that's not an issue.
No.
Yeah.
Even then, I think you'd be hard pressed to see any performance difference because you used longer variable names, right? I mean, in the stuff that we do, right?
Exactly, and I'm not even sure that the interpreter really uses them when it comes to, if you ask to know what's in a specific function, yeah, it might do. So if you keep stuff like last lines and whatever AutoHotkey have of debugging options on, yeah, those might have an impact if again, if the script is large enough, or if your speed need is extreme or something like that, yeah. But yeah, I don't see it really mattering for our cases, at least.
Yeah. All right. So just remember, annotate. Write it in there. You'll be thankful. You and other people will be very thankful for having done it.
Yeah, and that, right. Just try and do it. I actually do my long naming convention because I don't always remember to annotate.
Yeah.
But by doing the other thing, I can't forget it.
That's awesome. All right, man. Well, this was fun.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
see you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Bye.